What is KARA no Shoujo? Well, it's a visual novel. A murder mystery set in the post-war Reconstruction period Japan. You play as a detective Ryuji Tokisaka trying to uncover the mysteries behind a string of bizarre, gruesome murders. Doesn't sound half bad. It seems to have an overwhelmingly positive reception online, at least at a glance, and oh my god, the trailer has music that would make a desert wet. I think I might be a little bit too easily persuaded by video game trailer music. Anything with a saxophone in it has me adding to cart quicker than a weeb insists their hentai games are highbrow art. If you've dabbled in the visual novel space for 2 seconds, you will notice that the murder mystery genre is anything but unpopulated. KARA no Shoujo does differentiate itself from the crowd with its setting. I mean, your protagonist is a 30-year-old, which is a nice change from the usual edgy teen, but it's a little awkward when you start taking schoolgirls on dates.
What? Schoolgirls? I thought this was a murder mystery.
Haha! You thought it was not a Japanese high school setting, but it was me, a Japanese high school setting. Yes, Ryuji ends up going undercover at his much younger little sister's high school. Now, the story spends a lot of time developing these schoolgirl characters, and kills a few off. Only once you get the H scenes, obviously. I should note that this game has a lot of hentai in it.
Hentai.
I don't understand why this game isn't censored on Steam. Now, I'm not calling for the game to be censored, you filthy degenerates, but an option to turn it off would be nice. Personally, I like my gritty noir murder mysteries and my giant anime titties to be somewhat separate. The timing of these murders is always surprising. Well, maybe not always surprising, but most certainly always devastating. The fact that the game kills off these very sweet, innocent characters at the peak of their story arc just makes the highly detailed murder scenes all the more disturbing. In fact, there are a few times where I felt physically ill, and I'm normally fine with gore. The downside to this approach is, well, while the characters are innocent and sweet, they're also, well, boring, for the most part anyway. In contrast to the gripping atmosphere of the crime scene investigations, the day-to-day segments are a snooze. Normally, if the plot is strong enough, I can tolerate excessive empty dialogue, a common occurrence in these visual novels. But the plot in KARA no Shoujo, while it starts strong, falls flat at the end. Let's compare it to another game with a lot of empty dialogue, a game where you spend a whole chapter playing hide and seek, Ever 17. Ever 17 is certainly not a benchmark of good writing, but it at least ties up most of its plot threads and has an absolutely killer plot twist. It sticks the landing, so to speak, and by doing so it makes the poor pacing and excessive fluff seem a lot more tolerable in hindsight. Comparatively, KARA no Shoujo's story has 3 main threads: the protagonist Ryuji's tragic backstory, Toko's origin, and the murder cases. While these threads do intertwine towards the end, they still feel like they're left hanging. While I can appreciate an ending that leaves some elements to the interpretation, here it just feels lazy. Most of the endings don't add much besides maybe a few pages of dialogue, a couple of extra scenes, and maybe some hentai for good measure. Not exactly worth the time investment. But then we get to the true ending. Here we go, boys! The big plot reveal! Oh, I can't wait! These VNs always have an ace up their sleeve. So that build up to no joke, that's kind of what the endings feel like. Now obviously I'm not going to spoil the ending in a spoiler-free review, but in all honesty there's not that much to spoil. Now I might be ragging on the game a little, but I think the reason why I'm so disappointed and frustrated is because at times it's really good. The soundtrack reflects this somewhat. A couple of songs are standouts. Just listen to some of this song, The Egg of Ninas, a strange song that fits the mood of the game perfectly. There are a couple of other standouts, but most of the soundtrack is a standard visual novel affair. Not that that's a bad thing, the bar for visual novel music is exceptionally high, but it just doesn't do enough to stand out. Let's just listen to a track from KARA no Shoujo and compare it to a track from the last visual novel I reviewed, one I also felt had a very generic VN soundtrack, Wonderful Every Day. One thing I will say about the music is that they know when to hold back. The The song I mentioned earlier is only played a handful of times so that when it does play, it actually makes an impact. No matter how good a song is, once you've heard it a million times, it'll suck the life out of you quicker than midday television. And you know what? The same thing can be said about the visuals. Most of the time it looks like any other visual novel, and then BAM! Some weird painting shit, or then BAM! Some chick getting her face cut open. Once again, the horror in this game is very well done. Overall, I'd call the visuals and music fine, or probably actually above average. I might be singing their praises a little bit more if I wasn't let down by the story. I would be doing the game a disservice by not mentioning the setting. Given that this is set only a few years after World War II, it's interesting to say the least. While it never gets deep in any sort of politics, it certainly has a rich atmosphere and made me take the luxuries of modern society for granted. Most of the gameplay revolves around making choices that affect the story. Pretty standard affair for a VN. However, the game does have crime scene investigations, where you click on things at a crime scene to, well, investigate them. If you're looking for Zero Escape style puzzles, prepare for disappointment, as the investigations are more akin to the Ace Attorney series, involving clicking on a few items in the area until you've seen everything in the room. The investigations generally do a good job of giving you a nice little break from the inevitable sea of text in a VN. You will also occasionally have to choose who done it, not just for the murderer, but the victims and the characters involved in other subplots. This can be a lot of fun and really helps with role-playing. You also choose where to hang out at the end of each day, a la Persona. This is mainly for the dating sim hentai stuff, but you also need to go to specific places in specific days to unlock all the endings. While these elements are fine, my biggest gripe is with the choice system. To progress with the story, you have to start the game over using trial and error to unlock all the endings. The game does give you a function to skip over previously read text, but these never work. Why do these never work? It's not that hard. Skip all the text you've already read. You don't have to stop at the end of each day. You don't have to stop randomly for no reason whatever. Just take me to the next bit of text that I have not read. I resorted to using a guide in the game, and thank God I did. I can see the appeal of getting the pen and paper out to map out what events happen on each day and what choices matter, etc, etc. But for someone with a life, well, arguably, I just don't have that kind of time. Not to mention, one of the endings involves finding a pixel-perfect clue that I struggled to find with a guide. So my last quarter of the game involved meticulously following a choice guide, hammering away at the spacebar and reading the occasional paragraph of dialogue that doesn't advance the plot. Not really my idea of a good time. Overall, I'd say the game certainly strives to be something special, but considering I found myself dreading having to play the game to review it, I think it fell somewhat short. The story feels like it's building towards something but never really gets there. This combined with a lack of message or moral, or at least a very poorly put across one, makes the game feel empty. Whether or not the loose ties at the end are lazy writing or sequel bait doesn't change my disappointment. I've heard that the sequel vastly improves on the first and rectifies almost all its criticisms, so I'll probably review that sometime in the future, so subscribe if you want to see that. I think the reason why I can't recommend this game is just because there's so many other good games in the same-ish genre. I mean, you've got the Zero Escape series, the Danganronpa series, the Ace Attorney games, amongst a myriad of others. I've seen many people on forums and such praising this visual novel as their all-time favourite. And I'm not here to shit on your parade. Well, I kind of did, but it was my intention. Really, these are just my personal thoughts on the game. If you did enjoy KARA no Shoujo, please tell me why in the comment section below, or just call me a fat Australian chip. You already have, haven't you? Or if you hated it like me, tell me what your favourite mystery visual novel is. But I will give the game a 5 out of 10. Buy the non-re games, it's cheaper. But really, what would I know? I'm just some pleb.